Hey guys.
Welcome back to Faith Over Fear podcast. So today we're going to be talking about faith and kind of activating your faith. So we have talked about faith, and we're kind of going to touch on this a little bit on discernment, we from the last episode. But so in the congreso that we've had this week, my local church, we had a preaching about faith. And I feel like throughout last week I was kind of like it was repeating in my mind, how sometimes we're in situations and we have faith, but we have to activate our faith, right. And it kind of ties in with discernment. There's times where God says something to us, but then we're like, was it God?
Right.
Yeah. Or, we question it. And I feel like it's normal to question, because when I ask God for stuff, I need 3 confirmations at least, but I feel like it's kind of like discernment. When God answers, you can't just ignore it, if you know what I mean. Right. There comes a time where he's gonna stop answering because you keep asking for another sign. So that's kind of what we're gonna be talking about. And I have some notes from the congreso, and he said that faith is a decision we make. We hear the word and we decide if we're gonna believe it or not. Yeah. So kind of when we ask God for something, in my situation, God told me to do something, and he gave me a few signs, and I was I ignored it the first few times, but then I was whoa, I need to do it, and it was a whole leap into the unknown. It was literally a whole leap into the unknown. True. And I feel like that's what faith is, you don't know what's going to happen, but you believe God.
Yeah. So it's will you have faith for God's answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was ignoring it because, that's kind of scary. But then I was I just did it because I was you know what? If he's saying it, he's going to be faithful, Mm-hmm. But he said, we hear it and we decide if we're going to believe it or not.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, mm-hmm. That's really good.
Yeah. And then he also said it's easier to believe that God can do with others and not with us. Sometimes we believe, when people talk about their miracles and their wonders, you're wow, Yeah. But then when you're going through something, your faith, where's your faith?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or kind of like Peter when he was walking on water, he had faith, but then he got a little scared and then he sunk, it's important to have that faith throughout your life, when God says something over you, believe it, Mm-hmm. If you're asking God for a sign and he's giving you the sign and you're ignoring it, and then you keep asking God for a sign and the sign is right there, believe it, take it and take his answer, I feel a lot of the times in the beginning when we're asking God for stuff, we don't think he's answering, but he literally is. Mm-hmm. But that's when eyes to see and ears to hear come, he's answering right in front of you, but you're was that you?
Yeah. We question it. Yeah. It's it's very true when it comes to faith. It's letting go and surrendering, mm-hmm. as well. I feel it kind of aligns to that. And I feel just like Jesus says, those those that are blessed are the ones that have faith before seeing, mm-hmm. And so that's also something kind of you mentioned, whenever you ask God for something, you have to have the faith and see it spiritually, see it with your spirit before it even happens. Yeah. That's how your faith is activated. That's how God is whoa, he is believing it without even seeing it with mm-hmm. his physical eyes. And then once you see it in your spirit, that's whenever you get to ask God, now let my physical eyes see it. Mm-hmm. Take me so my physical eyes can see that blessing, mm-hmm. that I'm believing that you will be able to bless me with. Because in my situation, for example, salvation for my family, I seen it spiritually. I've seen my family in the church, every single person, getting baptized. And it's my spirit has seen it. And now I'm working towards my physical eyes to see it. And so I've been telling God, let my physical eyes be the ones to see it now, because I believe it in my spirit, and I've seen it in my spirit. So now take me so I can be able to see it physically. Mm-hmm. But where does it start? It starts by having faith without seeing.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And you have to keep that faith throughout the process, because I'm sure that during the process it's a little hard, you know, to keep having that faith, but like through the process, like it's important to remember, you know, like this is what God said, like keep going.
Because when he promises something, he
always keeps his promises.
Yes, he always keeps his promises. And that's something that you have to keep in mind. God is not us where if I promise you something, I could not do it, you know, but with God is like what he promised it, he will do it, you know, so that's faith right there again, you know, you have to have that certainty, like, no, God will do it. And it's like a way of praising him too. Having that faith is like praising him, is being able to be like, wow, like you believe in me, and because of your faith, you are saved.
No, and I feel like sometimes when you like go, like, I guess say something in faith, like think about it, like why would God make you look bad? You know, exactly. It reminds me of this one time, it was my friend's birthday, I think. It was her birthday, so we went out to eat, and one of our friends came with us, and we had barely started talking to him, and we were trying to like invite him to church and stuff. And we were kind of talking to him about God and stuff, but he was like, yeah, you know. And then we were on the way home, and I was speeding. Don't speed. I was speeding, and the speed limit had gone down to 65 because it was a work zone. And I think I was going either 75 or 80. So I was going like pretty high, you know? And I was driving, and I see a cop, and I was like, oh no, you know? And I was like, I'm going to get pulled over. Like I knew I was going to get pulled over. And then he's like, oh, you're going to get a ticket. And I'm like, no, I'm not. You know, I was like, no, I'm not. And then he was like, yeah, you are. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I was like declaring it like I'm not. And I was like, I'm not getting a ticket. Like I said, I'm not getting a ticket. And then my friend in the back, she's like, in the name of Jesus, you're not getting a ticket. And I was like, I was like, there's no way I'm getting a ticket. I was like, I'm not getting a ticket, you know? I kept declaring it. I was like, I'm not getting a ticket. So then I pull over, and the guy comes to my window, and he asked me, like, did you know you were speeding? And I told him, yeah. You know, I was like, yeah. And then he was like, he asked me for my stuff, and then he left. And he was kind of gone for a little bit. No, for a while. Like, it was a while. And I feel like I was dead set on I believed it. I believed it 100%. But then for, like, a split second, I was like, whoa, I was like, what if I do get a ticket? Like, I'm gonna look really bad, you know? But then I was like, absolutely not. Like, God is not about to let me look bad in front of him when we've been trying to convince him to come to church. You know, I was like, there's just no way. So I didn't rebuke it, but basically, like, you know, I was like, there's no way. Like, the doubt tried to like creep in, but I was like, no. Like, I was like, no. So then the guy comes, and he's like, all right, well, I'm gonna give you no. But during that time, like, he was like, you're gonna get a ticket, because it was getting like, he was taking forever. He was like kind of taking forever. So that's why doubt kind of tried to like creep in, but I was like, nah. And then he comes to my window, and he's like, I'm gonna give you a warning. And then he was like, I don't even remember what he said, but he was like, have a nice day. And I was like, God bless you, you know? But then I was like anybody else would have gave me a ticket. And I feel like he was going to give me a ticket. I feel like he pulled me over because he was going to give me a ticket. Like, he was like, oh, I got someone right here. You know, I feel like I knew that. But I feel like because I believed, and because I declared, and because of the situation and my faith, I didn't get a ticket. And that's awesome. Like, that just proves his faithfulness. And after that, like, he was like, so when is Bible study? Or and then he ended up coming to church with us, and he was churching with us for a little bit. But it's like that faith, like, God literally showed up in that moment. Like, that was a moment for God to show up and be like, I am who I say I am, you know? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I could have been like, oh, like, I'm gonna get a ticket, you know? Like, it just depends. It's on perspective, you know? Faith is perspective. And the bishop talked about that. Like, sometimes we're like, we see all the bad, but it's like, oh, like, if you look at it in a different way, like, God is here and he's gonna work here, you know? But it just depends on how you see things. Like, I could have been like, oh, darn it, like, I'm gonna get a ticket, and, you know, spoke death over the situation, and I would have gotten a ticket, you know? But I was like, nah, like, I'm not getting a ticket, and I didn't get a ticket. And it was because we declared it, you know? We declared it, and we believed it, And it's just amazing because I was in a work zone too.
Yeah.
Like it was a work
Yeah.
zone, like the
Yeah.
fine doubles.
Yeah, that's true.
No,
that's
yeah. And hold on, and there's a verse. It's in Mark 9:23, and it says, "What do you mean if I can?" Jesus asked. "Anything is possible if a person believes." And it's like, it's not like if he can, like he can.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
we have to believe.
Yes.
And activate it, you know?
Yeah.
Like I believed and I spoke it out, you know?
And it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And I feel like, you know, having faith of like knowing who you're praying to as well. Like you also have to, whenever you're praying and you're wanting this miracle and you're wanting this answer, I feel like you're having faith in the person that, you know, opened the sea, that resurrected, that has done many miracles, because you always have to keep that in perspective. Who are you praying to? And that's something that always feels like to like implement, of like, know who you're praying to. Like you're praying to the God that opened the sea. You're praying to the God that, you know, freed his people. Like just, you know, you have to keep that in perspective, and that kind of like activates your faith. And I feel like growing your faith is just having that closeness with God, you know, developing that relationship, because I feel like faith needs to have like, it's like a stepping stone. You need to go higher, higher and higher and higher to the point that you're having crazy faith. Like it's only crazy until it happens. You know what I mean? And so I feel like right now, like a really good way to like know him, you know, we're gonna always go back to it, but reading your Bible, fasting and praying, that's how you'll be able to activate that faith, because there's many situations that, you know, people need evidence to know who God is. They need to have like, oh no, like I need to see it and then I will believe. But it's just like, you know, going back, like God, I mean, God and Jesus says it, like those who believe without seeing are the ones that are blessed, you know? So you have to put into perspective where it's like, you know, like it's not that God doesn't want to do it, or it's like God, like, oh, like he can't do it, but it's just because he wants a relationship. He wants it to be like, I want you to love me because of who I am, not because of what I can give you. And so that's why he wants to be like, you know, believe in me, believe in this, and then like I will be able to show you, because that means that you love me for who I am, not because I can give you all these blessings.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, but like it's important to like trust in him, you know, like he is literally God. And I feel like that's like sometimes we're like, whoa, like nah, like well, like the verse said if you can, like what do you mean if I can? Like it's God, like he can do it all, you know? We just have to believe. And I feel like a lot of the times we limit God. Like we only get to a certain place because we don't believe. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And sometimes we believe, but not enough. Yeah. Like there's so much more, you know? And I feel like if we start limiting God, like we're only going to get to here, but God has so much more, you know?
That's also a good one. Like don't limit God in your prayers. Like you're able to be like, you know, tell him however big dreams, goals that you have, and he can like get that for you. You know, he can take you there, but it's just you like knowing like that he can, like, you know, it just circles back of like having that faith. But I feel like it's also like, how can I say, like, I feel like you know how you did say that it's like, you know, don't limit God and just having that faith. But the beauty of it is that he also says that if you have faith in the size of a mustard seed, you can also move mountains.
Yeah, you know, that's insane, because a mustard seed is like you can't even,
tiniest
you can
seed.
barely see it.
Yeah.
So we literally don't have no faith. Yeah. Because we're not sitting, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And so that kind of comes into perspective of like, he's telling you like, hey, like you can still move mountains with this tiniest faith. Yeah. So it's like telling you, so imagine if your faith grows. Imagine what else I can do, you know, for you. So like, for example, like, you know, in our own personal life, or at least like for me, like I feel like I'm in a stage where I like to think big. I like to think of like, you know, have big goals and dreams. And that comes from like, you know, my brother and my dad and my mom, where they always like to have like big goals. And so that's kind of like in the same perspective with me and God. Like when it comes to my ministry, like I always believe like, God, you're going to do something big, but I'm believing it before it's happening, you know, but now it's up to me to take myself also to that position.
Yeah, and I feel like for me, I kind of struggle to, I mean, I believe in God, you know, but I feel like I struggle to, I guess, feel worthy in a way. Like I feel unworthy. So I kind of limit, and I feel like, so this is going to help me. And the preaching that he gave did help me, you know, like he is God and he can get us there, you know, but we have to activate that faith. We have to believe and take action. You know, I feel like God has placed it in my heart, like to do things. And I feel like I'm like stuck, you know, and I need to take action to my faith, you know, because I do have faith, but I feel like I'm just kind of like waiting for him, and it's like he's waiting for me. Like,
yeah,
what are you waiting on, you know?
That's true. Like, yeah, like we think that like, God, when are you moving? But it's like, when are you moving?
Yeah, no,
you
yeah,
know?
and
that was really good.
The bishop literally said that, and I was like, ouch, like, bro, you know. But yeah, like I feel like sometimes it's hard to have faith, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel like even if you do have faith, like you have to take action in it, you know, kind of like I believe that I wasn't going to get that ticket, but I took action into declaring it, you know, out loud. And I, you know, like sometimes we just have to believe, even though it looks impossible, or even if we feel unworthy, you know, like he's God.
Yeah.
He's literally
he's
God.
Literally God. And another, what I love about my mom is that I feel like she's very faith-based. Like, I remember that whenever me and my mom, we were barely getting into the church, and we had our very first Bible study at the house of the family that brought me into the church. So it was pastor, it was another sister, and, you know, the brother and the sister, they were all there. And so my mom was telling them like a little bit about her testimony, or like her walk, and like, you know, because she's always been a woman that believes in God since the very beginning, because it was implemented to her. And so they even told her, they're like, you may not be a sister like here at the church, but you're a sister in faith. Because my mom has gone through so many things where you're just kind of like, whoa, like I feel like she's my example of like knowing who we're praying to.
Yeah.
Because I kind of want to say this testimony when it comes to when it came to my little brother. So my mom, you know, obviously she got pregnant, and you know, when you have to go for the ultrasound to see if everything's good, everything's healthy, they tell her, they're like, we found something. And so they start to investigate to see what it is, because they saw that his head was like larger than the normal size, and that usually means, well, at least in this situation, that he was going to have Down syndrome. And so they're like, we need to have that deeper test, because it shows that he's going to have that. So they had the test. And like my mom, you know, you can see the screen, right? And so my mom, you know, they did the screen, and they gave her the bad news that his spine was completely crooked.
Oh, wow.
And my mom saw it with her own eyes. And they're like, there's a 99.9% that he's going to come out with Down syndrome, and he won't be able to walk.
Whoa.
And so obviously, like as a mother, you're like, you don't want that for your son, you know? And so she was like, she rejected it. She was like, no, my son is healthy.
Wow.
I don't believe it, but like it was in her own personal faith. And then she was like, and they were telling her like, you know, you need to have therapy in order to receive a son like that. And she was like, I'm not going to those therapies. She was like, I'm gonna love my son no matter how he comes in, but if I go, it's kind of saying like, yeah, he's gonna come out like that, you know? So she always said in her whole pregnancy, like even my aunt was saying, like, pray over your womb and be like, you know, God, like I'm going to birth a healthy son. Like he's not going to have this sickness. He's going to be healthy. 9 months. That's what she prayed. She never went to a therapy. But it was still like, because obviously like she saw it with her physical eyes. There was moments where it's just kind of like, you know, even though I saw it, like, God, no, like, you know, yes, I will still love my son no matter what, but no, like, you know, you won't bring him sick. You know, he won't be like that. 9 months later, my brother is born. And it's funny because like my dad did knew, and like, you know, I won't get more into details on that aspect, but whenever he was born, my mom was like, because they had to like kind of like induce her, so she fell asleep, and so she woke up and she was like, you know, where's Carlos, like where is he? And so then my dad was like, you know what, I think he did came out sick. And mom was like, why? Because he's so ugly, like he's just that's just how my dad is, you know. So he was like, yeah, it's because, you know, sometimes babies, they do look like
they look a little
depending. And so my dad was like, he's so ugly. No, yeah, I think he did come out with Down syndrome. And so then but then my dad didn't want to ask, because I think he had to go to work or something like that. So my uncle was there, and so my mom was like, hey, can you ask the doctors how's the baby, because I haven't carried him or anything. And so yeah, my uncle comes, and and then the doctor comes and they're like, oh, like, no wonder you're so eager to know where's your son, because I just read, like, his papers and all that. And then he closes the papers and he was like, there's some things that not even science can explain, but your son is 100% healthy. And so that's whenever the doctor was like, whoever you're praying to, keep on doing it. Because it showed here 99.9%.
99.9. That's crazy.
And my mom saw his cricket spine. And he came out 100% healthy. And so that's why, like, that's why I know, whoa, you have something big for my brother.
That I was gonna say that he literally tried to take him out since birth. And
so I'm just kind of like, whoa, like, even there was a moment where, like, my brother was like, maybe I am meant for something big, because I came out healthy. I didn't come out with the sickness. And I was like, you have your legs. You were not even supposed to walk. You have, your, like, you're healthy in every single aspect. So, but because my mom believed it, even she still saw it, she still saw the results and everything. And she was like, no, like, I declare that I'm going to birth a healthy son. And she said it with boldness. That's something that you also have to consider. Say it with boldness, say it with firmness,
and believe it with your whole heart.
Exactly. And you will see that God will do that miracle for you.
And I feel like believing with your whole heart is so important. Because I feel like I can't shake the feeling, but, like, I know this is nothing compared to, like, your testimony, but I feel like when, like, I was in that situation with the ticket, like, I believed 100%. And then doubt tried to creep in for a second, but I shut it down real quick. And I feel like that's so important. Like, believe 100% because of who he is. It's literally because of who he is. And your trust in him, like, is so strong that he shows up, because why wouldn't he? You have faith like that, and it reminds me of the story of Jairus in the gospel. Like, they said that his daughter had died, he's like, come, like, my daughter, but he believed. And even the lady that touched his garment, the one that had the bleeding problem, like, she believed enough that just touching his garment was gonna heal her. And he said, because of your faith, like, you are healed, and because of Jairus's faith, his daughter was raised to life. Like, she was dead and he raised her up to life, like, it's literally just believing. Like, we have one job. We literally have one job, and it's to believe, because he is who he says he is, and it just takes, like, that faith.
It really does. It's you have to and that's why, like I said, like, my mom, she helps me out, because she was like, no, like, believe in God, have more faith, because I'm someone that, like, I can overthink certain situations, or there's sometimes where it's like, it's because, like, I like, I like to declare, like, I don't have it, but there's moments that I do have anxiety. There is moments where I overthink and all that. And so, like, my mom, because of her life, she's like my testimony of, like, having that big bold faith for God, because that he can do it. And even my own life, like, also, like, my mom, and it's funny, with every single pregnancy, she's had to have that big faith. And I'm just kind of like, whoa, so that's why I, like, tell her, they're like, you're a sister of faith, because of how how much faith you have for God, and I feel like that's something that, we want to encourage you, like, if there's something that, like, you want to see, believe it, that God can do it, but we also have to put into perspective that sometimes we want something, but is it really the best thing for us, and I feel like, like, there is certain situations where it's like maybe not his timing. So you also have, like, you have faith that it's going to happen. You also have to have faith in his timing. And when you will receive it, and, like, having faith in the process and all that. So I feel like, I just think that faith requires it in every single aspect in your life,
Yes. But I feel like also I want to talk about, like, kind of like how I started off, like, when we ask God for something and he answers, like, we have to believe that is him answering, and we have to take it and apply it,
like, if you feel it in your spirit, act on it,
you know. And I feel like a lot of the times we have so little faith. Like
Yeah.
God answers and we're like,
Yeah.
it's like he didn't even answer because you didn't even acknowledge it, you know?
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Like it literally happens to us all the time. So it's, I guess I just want to say, like, believe that God answered, you know, and do what you got to do. Because I feel like, and that comes with discernment, you know, like sometimes, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's like doubt. Like, doubt just creeps in. Like, obviously, if you ask God for something, like, he's going to answer. And, like, when he does, I feel like it's literally doubt, you know? Like, I can't think of anything else because we're like, well, nah, maybe that was. And I feel like in the beginning, like, before I started getting discernment, that was one of the things I would always be like, well, was that God or was it not? You know? And that's kind of how my walk with discernment kind of started. You know, I was like, is it or is it not? You know? But then the more that I would like believe and like take it, like the more he started showing me like, this is my voice. You know, like this is me, you know? So then I started developing that discernment, you know, because I acted upon it. I believed that it was him answering. I believe that it was him leading me and him guiding me. And that's how you become spirit led, because you're believing that he's leading you. You're letting him, you know, you're like, you're opening up that faith, you know, you're activating your faith and you're like, this is him leading me. This is him speaking to me, you know, and that kind of starts building your relationship with God. You know, you have to take that step and be willing to sacrifice and just like receive, you know, and believe that it's him. Like I feel like that's just the beginning, you know.
Believing that it's him. Oh that's really good. And you'll be able to develop it with time. You'll be able to develop it with just getting close to him. I feel like that's always a key, and I feel like that's always kind of like the center point of like getting closer to him so he can be able to take you there. And so with that, you know, so just pray to God and he will be able to activate that faith. He will be able to grow your faith, and then you would just, you know, go from there, and then, you know, developing that faith, and you'll be able to help others in that aspect as well.
And I feel like it is good to ask him to like grow your faith. You know, that comes with like kind of being real with yourself, you know, and like, you know, telling him like, help me have this faith, you know, or give me this discernment, you know? Also, I have another note that says you need to have clarity for what you're expecting. Kind of like like we have to have a vision, you know, like when we're walking with God, because if not, like, what are we, you know? Like we have to have like something to look forward to, I guess, you know? So when we're like trusting God for something, we need to know what we want. You know? And believe it and declare it, you know? And that's what's gonna get you there. You have to have a vision and stay focused and work towards it, you know?
Because also like a good way to do is like you can write it down. So you can also like, for example, like career wise, if you have like a vision, you know, write it down, you know, like plan it out, pray over it, and that's you telling God like, hey, here's my plan, you know, bless it, and I believe that you can help me with it. It's because it's like he's like a partner, you know what I mean? Like it's like you're a partner in this, in life, you know. So you tell him, I was like, this is my plan, this is what I want, this is what I'm believing, and so, you know, edit it out, you know, take it out of me, or help me to develop that faith in it and take me there. And then also with relationship, you know, I feel like, you know, when it comes to your husband or your wife, you can write down like a list, like, God, I would love for this person to have like a loving heart, to have a serving heart, you know. And then you can even put some physical aspects of it as well, but you have to make sure that you're being spirit led. And then once you're being spirit led, you write down your list, pray over it, and have faith that this is what God is going to give you in your life. Why? Because he put it in your heart to write down all these aspects, because these aspects are going to go accord with your aspects, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of like, that's also one way to be able to kind of like see it and kind of like presenting it towards God. But it starts with prayer. So you pray about it, you write down this vision, you write down your list, whatever the case might be, and then you just let go and let God, because you're going to have faith that this is what you put in my heart. So I'm going to write it down and like give it to you. So kind of like a vision board as well. I feel like vision boards can also be a good thing, you know, like if you have whatever the case may be, you know, with career wise, relationships and school or whatever, you know, I feel like also you know, doing it as a vision board, I feel like that's also like a good way to kind of like map it out. You know what I mean? Like, you know, they do that usually like in the beginning of the year or the end of the year, you do your vision board. But I feel like that's also not a bad thing. You know, like you're telling God, like, I would like this. This is what I believe in, you know. And I feel like with our podcast in general, like, you know, we're thinking big, not for us, but because we want it to be a place where people know who God is, you know, based on our experiences and based on our walk. And so we're believing big in it, but we're also believing that God is taking control of it.
And I feel like back to like the vision thing, like God gives us purpose. God gives us vision, you know? So the more that you get close to God, the more that you strengthen your relationship with God, like he starts to give you your purpose and he starts to give you vision, you know? And that's what keeps you going. And it's beautiful, you know? And I'm really glad that we're like talking about like discernment in the last episode and faith, because I feel like that's the beginning. And I don't know why we didn't talk about it sooner, you know? But I feel like that's the beginning. Like believe most importantly, you know, and act upon it. And learn like to listen to God's voice, you know, because that's what's gonna, like, we need to be led by the Spirit, you know, because if we're not led by the Spirit, then what are we doing? You know?
That's true. And it's so true, just kind of like you said, act upon it. Because, for example, if we had this vision of the podcast and we're like, no, you know, or probably nobody's gonna listen, or whatever the case may be,
and it's all like perspective, how you see things, you know.
But
like we believe
and take a leap of faith.
And in my case, like, God literally made it happen, you know. And it's amazing because I believed. He gave me the vision, you know. He gave me the vision. He placed it in my heart. He prepared me spiritually. And then here comes Aylin.
That's so true.
And I feel like he placed it in you, you know. And we both believed and we both talked about it. And then he was there. He blessed it. He made it happen, you know.
That's so true. I like
that's
that.
faith. No, no, but like believe. Like I knew I was going to have a podcast, but I'm like, how, when, you know, but all those questions don't even matter. Believe and take action, you know?
That's crazy. That's really cool. And that's why, like,
faith over fear.
And that's how the name came upon, you know,
because we believed. And it's scary. Like, a lot of things can be scary, you know, but either you have faith or you have fear. Like, you know, there's the spirit of fear or the spirit of faith. Like, you believe, you know?
That's so good. And like, also it reminds me of a situation, like, for example, in my church in the beginning of the year of 2023, I was finally wanting to renovate the church. I was like, it's something that all of us always had in mind, but I said, I was like, for 2023 we're going to renovate the church when it comes to like the paint and the decor and all that. And so since there's not like a lot of income because our church is small, I was, you know, presenting that plan to my youth, and I told them, I was like, we need to act upon it. If, like, this time, like, we want to do it, like, let's put action to it. Like, let's put action to that faith. I was like, don't see that there's not a lot of income, don't see that we don't have many members. Like, you don't know where the income is going to come from. You don't know what's going to happen in the transition of the year. And it's crazy because you know, when it came to, for example, the paint, like, I feel like paint, and when you want to renovate, it's always expensive, you know, and so, you know, you start thinking like how you're going to do it. But I told him, I was like, let's just focus on the fact of like, it's going to happen. Like, you know, just believe it. And then through the walk, God is going to provide. And he sure did. Like, it's crazy because whenever we were renovating, I reconnected with my dad, and I told him about it because obviously those are things that I don't really know about, and my dad, he knows. And I told him, I was like, hey, like, I really want to do this with, like, let's say the light fixtures. Like, what do you think about this? How can we be able to do this in the restroom? And so then he told me, he was like, oh, well, if you want, I can go check it out. And then I was like, oh yeah, you know, that'd be cool. And so he did. He came to my church and he checked it out, and he was like, oh, you can do this and that. And so he told me, he was like, oh, I can do it. And so he literally paid for everything.
Wow.
Yes. And him and his team, they came and like they did everything, and he paid for everything. And I'm like, whoa, like, that's just kind of proves to you that that was the last person I have ever thought that was going to help us out economically and also with the labor. And so that's when I told my youth, and even my mom saw it. They were like, you know, I was like, I told you, I was like, you don't know, like he's not even a member in the church. So it's like kind of like, imagine if we were going based off like who's in the church, then that would be limiting God. But because I told her, I was like, no, you don't know how God is going to provide. So that means we open the doors for others to come and like bless us and help us out. So it's just kind of crazy that like my own father, the last person that I would think was going to help us out, was the one that helped. And so that's when it comes to place where it's like, you know, believing, and then God does the impossible. You know, so it was, and just really cool. Does the impossible. Exactly. But it just started with faith, and then it went with action, and then it was with you doing the possible, and then God did the impossible.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's a really cool testimony that I get to have. And so then it comes to the point where I'm like, okay, you know, my father has come and he's already stepped in the church, but I was like, I believe it in Jesus' name that the next time he goes is for a service. It's for him to connect with God, you know. But that's just, now that's up to my faith. Now that's up to, you know, leaving it to God and praying and fasting and all that for my dad. But it was just like, it was really cool. It was really cool that we were able to.
And the fact that you believed, like you were like, it's gonna happen. You know, you believed 100%, you know?
Yeah, and it's funny because I was like, I'm gonna do it with or without you, because it's going to happen. You know, because sometimes like I limited myself a lot because it's like, no, nobody else wants to do it. But in 2023, I told him, I was like, I'm gonna do this without y'all or with y'all. You know, and I was like, as long as I have the approval of God and my pastor, let's do it. You know what I mean? And so like I praise God, because like also like, again, like I'm not trying to, you know, say this about me, but it's like God also provided financially. I was able to put a lot of like pocket, because it's like, whoa, like you think about it, I don't have the highest paying job, but I was able to do it because God literally provided. Because I told God, I was like, no hay opción, like there's no other option, it's going to happen. You know, so
and that's literally awesome. And that's like an example of acting on your faith and God coming through, because he does come through. You know, and we hear about like all the pastors that are like, oh, we rented out this place and we believe that it was going to be filled, you know, and then God always comes through. You know, it's just the believing and taking action. And it seems like, oh yeah, but like you have to believe wholeheartedly, like God is who he says he is, you know, again, like, and it really doesn't get better than that, you know, like he is the God of the impossible. And sometimes we forget, like, he is the God Almighty, you know, like, and nothing is too big for him. And it's all about perspective, like keep having the right mind. And also like the way we speak, like we have to speak life. And if you catch yourself, like we're always saying like, oh, like I'm dead, like, what? You know, or like just little things, but it's like you're literally speaking death. You know, you're literally speaking death over yourself. Or when you're like, oh, we could, or hopefully, you know, like that's
also like sparking some doubt into that conversation.
It's like, no, it's gonna happen. You know, like what we speak is very important, and there's power in the tongue, and James talks about that, you know, like there's power in the tongue. And a lot of the times we limit ourselves because of what we're speaking, you know? Like even if you think something, don't speak it. You know?
Exactly. Yeah, because also that kind of reminded me how like speaking life is like, for example, with my brother, like we see who he is now, but we like to declare who he will be. We don't like to focus on like what's going on now. We are focusing on who he's going to become and his ministry in God. Like it's because like God spoke to him. He went to a service and God spoke to him, and you know, God gave me that vision with my brother. So it's just kind of like, you know, instead of us saying like, oh, well, it's because he's this, it's because he's that, like he will never come to it. It's kind of like doubting what God already promised my brother. But me and my mom, we always like to speak of like, no, like he may be this now, but he's not going to be that forever. He's going to be this person. He's going to have a ministry. He's going to be a man of God and going out there. I don't know why, but I just feel it like in my spirit that my brother is going to be an evangelist. Like based on like who he is, it's just kind of like I see that for him, you know? And so it's just kind of like I believe it. Like I know that God has like a big something big for my brother, just like we mentioned his testimony at birth.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It was just like very crazy that happened. But I feel like, you know, it starts with speaking life. It starts with believing who he's going to become because of who God is.
Yeah. And I feel like even in the beginning you might feel silly, like,
oh yeah,
you know, I feel like it's hard to kind of change your ways and like start speaking things that you're not seeing, you know, but I feel like God sees that and he sees your faith, you know. So don't feel silly, just do it, you know. And I feel like, I mean, it's easier said than done, but like the more you practice it and the more that you get familiar with it and the deeper you deepen your relationship with God, the more these things come like naturally, you know. You're like, well, obviously we're human, you know, there's always going to be a little bit of doubt, but like just keep your eyes on Jesus and trust that he is who he says he is, you know, because he is that. And he comes through in so many amazing ways, you know. We just have to believe and speak life and take action. Like that's the main things with faith, you know.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a good point. But I feel like, this is a really good topic because I feel like it just goes hand in hand with our relationship with God. You know? So pretty good.
And it starts with believing, like, you know.
Yeah, that is the number one thing whenever you go into your church, and it's just believing what you're receiving.
Yeah, but with that being said, I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope that it encourages you to strengthen your faith, to believe God for the impossible, because he is the God of the impossible. So be sure to like this video, leave a comment if you have any questions or any topics you want us to talk about. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also tune in on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you want to keep up with us on social media, we have Instagram and TikTok. Everything will be down in the description. But with that being said, we'll see you guys next time.
Bye guys.